Hello, welcome to another episode of my series of new releases and what I am using instead. There were a few releases in the past 4 weeks ever since I did my first episode of the series, and I have to say that nothing has truly tempted me to buy it, but I still wanted to talk about a few things that kind of caught my eye or that I feel are worthy to talk about. Before we get started, I just want to say that I did add 2 palettes to my collection this month, this past 4 weeks. First one was the Natasha Denona I Need a Nude palette. That palette I got with my points at Ulta, so I didn't actually pay for it. But my overall review and thoughts on that palette are on my Instagram, where I also did some comparisons. I will link the post down below. But pretty much what I'm gonna say about that palette also fits to all these palettes, which is I didn't need that palette. I could have gotten the same looks that I get with that palette out of shadows that I already own. Of course, that your collection is going to be different than my collection. Your makeup preferences will be different from my makeup preferences. So in the end, it's up to you to decide what actually will add to your collection or not. It's up to you to decide what to buy or not. But I am trying my best to really think about what I have, and I'm at a point where I have so much eyeshadow that even if something is unique, it doesn't necessarily add to my collection because it's gonna get very little use. The second palette that was added to my collection was the Nomad Cosmetics, the Halloween palette, the Ghost Town USA, and that one was sent to me in PR. So those, I'm not gonna be talking about those 2 new releases, I'm gonna talk about some other ones. So let's get started. So if you have been keeping up with the releases, you might have seen that there has been a lot of new concealers released. And concealer is a category of my makeup collection that kind of serves a useful purpose and that technically I wouldn't need to have multiples of. It's in the same situation as foundations, bronzers, mascaras, eyebrow pencils. Those are all makeup categories that for me, for my makeup preferences and the way that I do my makeup, I technically wouldn't need to have more than one. One of them will serve a purpose. So in terms of the concealer, I don't care if it is, medium coverage, full coverage, matte, dewy. I don't care about any of that. All I care about is that it covers my under eye circles, my dark circles, that it looks like skin, and that it wears well. However, for some reason, even though I have 3 concealers here that I love, and I'm gonna go into it in a little bit, I'm always intrigued to try the new concealers. The one that has really caught my eye has been the Natasha Denona one, but there has been a lot of other concealers, the Makeup by Mario, the Tower 28, the Live Tinted, the House Labs. There has been a lot of concealers lately. So this is just kind of, my reminder that I have already concealers that I love in my collection and that work really well for me and that serve the purpose of concealing my under eyes and that look like skin. And these 3 here are them. So first, the Kosas and the Glossier, I kind of use these together. I love using the Glossier all over my face. And the Glossier, even though is technically a light coverage concealer, there is something about the tone of it that I think I think you can see how much I've used of it. It just looks it's just really similar to my skin tone. And when I put this under my eyes, again, even though it is a light coverage concealer, it kind of neutralizes the blue. It's almost like a color corrector, even though it's not a color corrector. And then the Kosas concealer, I kind of go on top, especially under my eyes, to just add more coverage and just like a healthy look. I do have always to remind myself that the Kosas concealer, I can only use it, and it only looks good if I use it in a certain way, which is I have to apply more than I think I need, and I have to let it sit under my eyes for a little bit, like 2, 3, 4 minutes. Because it doesn't fully set, there isn't really the risk of it drying down without drying down and then it's impossible to blend. Like sometimes that happens with other concealers, but this one, I can let it sit for a long time and then blend it out, and that's how I get the best results. And this is kind of like what I use pretty much when I go to work. The other concealer that I'm enjoying is the Milk Makeup one, and this one I think is similar to the Kosas, but it has more coverage and I think it's a little bit more sturdy. And this one I kind of use it on its own all over my face. So yeah, these are the concealers that I am using instead of buying all the new concealers, because the thing is, concealer does go bad quicker than other makeup items. So please let me know what concealers have you been loving and what are you, using up instead of buying the new ones. I do want to buy the Natasha Denona eventually, but I want to finish some concealers before I get there because I actually have more concealer than just these three, that I actually should use up before I add anything to my collection. The other thing that I have seen around that caught my eye was the Cali Ray blush lip thing. I don't know exactly what that product is, but it's kind of like a lip gloss, but I think it's also a blush. And there is one shade that looks like a cool tone brown. And Milani also has launched some lip glosses that there is also one shade that looks like a cool tone brown. And that's like my color. But then, here's the thing. If you like a certain category of makeup or if you like a certain type of color, it is very likely that you already have something like that in your collection because, usually we buy what we like. So I have actually a lot more than these three lip glosses that would fit in the cool toned brown category. But these are the ones that I want to get more use out of. This next one was sent to me a while ago and I have barely used it. It's a really pretty light, cool-toned brown. It's a little bit on the light side, but I think it's still pretty. The glazed one, I just love all the lip, what are these called? The lip oils from in Beauty. And that is one that I don't use a lot, even though it's my color. And the Amicale one, I've been using this one a lot. The only problem with this one is that it's super sticky and I have really long hair. So whenever I leave the house with this lip gloss on, my hair just sticks to it. But it's just also super, I think it's like a lip treatment. It's very hydrating. So yeah, these are the brown lip glosses that I would be using instead of buying the new ones. Now these other releases, they have not tempted me. I have absolutely no interest in buying them, and I also don't think that anyone has any interest in these. I mean, I haven't seen anyone actually talking about these in a positive way. But are these three palettes that I noticed that are all kind of like matte neutrals. I think the Kosas one is not all matte, but the shimmer in it looks so lackluster that it might as well just be an all matte palette. And I just thought it was interesting to see these brands coming out with an all matte palette. I do think that for the Nessa Myricks, the Groundwork palette, I think that palette, it does make sense for her to release it because she is mostly a makeup artist brand and I can see that being useful for a makeup artist. But the truth is that neutral mattes are one of the most common makeup items out there. So if you have makeup, it is very likely that you have neutral mattes. And it is also very likely that you have a preference for the tones. So for me personally, if I'm gonna wear a neutral eyeshadow, it's gonna be neutral to cool toned. I almost never, maybe once a year, I will wear a warm brown, but 99% of the time I'm wearing a neutral to cool tone brown. So I just wanted to show the Glam palette as an example for me. This is a palette that has all of my perfect matte neutrals that I could possibly want. This palette's not perfect for me in general, but the mattes in here are pretty much everything I could possibly want to create a neutral look. So this is just kind of a reminder that you don't need an all matte neutral palette to be able to create a neutral look. It's very likely that if you have a neutral palette with neutral mattes, as long as they have a good range, you're good to go. Most of the time for me, I need a lighter cool toned brown, I need a mid-tone cool tone brown, and I need a deeper one. And this is pretty much all I need. I don't even use this shade or this shade here. Okay, now we're gonna get into my custom palettes. So the first palette that I saw released, and again, didn't tempt me because one of the shades in it I already have, is the Natasha Denona Mini something. I forgot the name of it. And on that palette, this shade here is the Galaxia shade, which is also the same shade in the Mini Retro, and that is one of my favorite eyeshadows from her. So I already have that shade. I don't need to buy the new Mini something to get that shade. But I just thought that the color story was so pretty. But I saw someone swatching it, if I can remember, maybe it was Natasha herself, that pretty much without this cool toned, this is a cool tone purple, this palette does not appeal to me. I think that what makes the palette really pretty is this cool toned kind of, you know, brown purple. So yeah, I wanted to do my dupe of it, and I will insert some swatches of it, and I think it's really pretty. I kind of did my own thing because I didn't want to put the shade that she chose for this shade here in particular, so I kind of did my own version of it. But yeah, it's a pretty palette. I think I'm gonna use my dupe, even though I can just pull the Galaxia shade from my other palette. But yeah, I really wasn't tempted to buy it. Now the other palette that I have duped, and you're probably looking at this palette and you're thinking, Regina, what palette is that? It's the Samarian Sunset. I don't know the name of that palette either. This is how you can see that I am really not interested in buying makeup right now when I don't even know the name of the things. So this is a new Adept Cosmetics palette, and again, I'm at a point in my life where I know my collection really well and I know my preferences really well. So when I saw the swatches and I saw the color story, I knew that first of all, the color story was not for me. Let me show you my dupe better. Like first of all, I don't love the Adept matte formula, so I just knew that you know, for me the palette would be worth for like the 2 rows of shimmer. But I also, when I looked at the shimmers, there's like 3 oranges. I don't wear orange very often. There's a silver, which I wasn't gonna use. There's 2 deep red kind of shades I also don't use. So pretty much what I would use would be the 2 like sparkly toppers, the green with like pink, and the pink one, which I already have plenty of similar shades in my collection. So, you know, when I looked at the palette, I could tell that first of all, I didn't want it, and that there's only a few shades that I would actually use. So again, wasn't even tempted by it. So when I was doing my dupe, you know, as I was duping it, again, I realized that like I didn't really have the 2 like red shades. I didn't have anything like that, but again, not because it's missing in my collection, but because I don't use those shades. And the oranges that I have are also not similar to the oranges in the palette, but again, because I don't use orange. And then when I was duping the mattes, this matte here is actually like a really light yellow kind of shade that like I wasn't gonna use. So I just replaced it with like a neutral like transition shade for me, and I kind of like, I don't know, it looks very spring to me, my version of it, while I think that the Adept version is like darker, grungier. But yeah, I feel like this fits my personality and my makeup preferences better than the Samarian Sunset, and I'm kind of happy with it. I will play with it, I'll see if I can do something. I kind of want to use like, I feel like in the end I wasn't really planning for this, but in the end I feel that it kind of works by row. I feel like these 3 rows here work really well. These 2 here, I'm not so sure. But yeah, I will kind of try to do some looks with it, and I will probably share it on my Instagram. This is it. I hope this was interesting. Please let me know down below what has caught your eye recently, and you know, if you decided not to buy it, what are you using instead? And I will see you on my next one. Bye bye.